Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga pulisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga pulisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan din ng kahalagahan ng pulisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan!
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socio-economic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan diin ang kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic research portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Good afternoon, everyone. Isang magandang hapon sa ating lahat. We are glad that you can join our discussion today. Welcome to the PIDS webinar series, where we feature our policy studies and the insights of our development actors and stakeholders. Through this knowledge sharing series, we hope to provide an accessible venue for evidence-based discussion of current and emerging development issues. I'm Sheila Siar, and I will be your moderator. For this afternoon, we will talk about the current state of our road and rail transport infrastructure and the issues and challenges confronting our land transport sector. What can be done to transform it to improve our road connectivity and mobility? Well, that is the question that we will answer this afternoon through our guest speakers. To formally start our conversation and give us more details about today's webinar, let us listen to the opening message of our Vice President, Dr. Marife Ballesteros.
Thank you, Sheila, and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to our public webinar on examining the Philippine road and rail transport infrastructure. Let me first acknowledge the presence of officials from the government and the private sector. From the Institute of Development Economists, JETRO, Director General Chi Kashiwabara, U.S. ASEAN Business Council Manager for the Philippines, Angelica Takushima, Department of Budget and Management Regional Director Ricky Sanchez, Presidential Commission for the Urban Poor, Chief of Operations for Visayas, Chloe Manlosa Osano, Philippine Guarantee Corporation, Senior Vice President Celso Gutierrez, Bulacan State University Vice Chancellor Cecilia Geronimo, Canadian Chamber of Commerce Philippines Chairperson Roger Dimuel, Management Association of the Philippines Chairperson Eduardo Yap, Philippine Exporters Confederation Vice President Maria Flor de Lisa Leong, and the Philippine Institute of Construction, Arbitration, and Mediators Vice President Lourdes Espinosa. I would like also to greet the various representatives from the government, academe, private sector, civil society, and media, and those watching through the PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages. The National Economic Development Authority or the NEDA has recently released the medium-term Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028. As stated, the plan's underlying theme is transformation of the economic and social sectors as well as institutions to achieve prosperous, inclusive, and resilient Philippines. One of the transformation agenda is enhanced connectivity. Digital connectivity is only one form. Another similarly important aspect of connectivity is physical connectivity through infrastructure and transport, which is the topic of today's webinar. Physical connectivity links markets to each other, connect urban centers to rural areas, and facilitate the movement of people, whether for employment, business and marketing transactions, or even socialization and recreation. The development of efficient road networks and rail infrastructure are critical to reduce the cost of transport and of doing business, and to improve the mobility of people to access markets, employment, and education centers. While the Philippines has shown remarkable improvements in infrastructure and transport, there is a need to improve on the resilience of existing and future infrastructure and adopt innovative solutions. According to the Department of Interior and Local Government, or DILG, only a small portion of the country's over 205,000 kilometer long road network is in good condition. Many national and local roads need repair or upgrading. This was also emphasized by the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report, where the Philippines only ranked 88 out of 141 countries in 2018 and 2019 in terms of road quality. In the same report, the country ranked last in Southeast Asia in terms of train services, efficiency, as well as railroad density. In fact, the LRT-1 and MRT-3 breached the 90% load capacity from 2010 to 2017 based on data from the Philippine Statistics Authority and the Light Rail Transit Authority. This is beyond the 60% load capacity, which is the standard set by the Japanese International Cooperation Agency for its urban rail transit system in its various studies. The latest Philippine Development Plan also noted that the Philippines' rail system's capacity is inadequate to meet the ridership post-pandemic. Moreover, most of our cities, as we all know, suffer from road congestion, resulting to significant economic losses. For instance, according to another study, the movement in and around Metro Manila alone has resulted in an annual economic loss of about $24.8 billion in 2016. The current situation highlights the challenges that we have yet to face in our road and rail transportation infrastructure. And our presenters today for today's seminar will delve deeper into these challenges and provide a comprehensive assessment of the issues. The study Road and Rail Transport Infrastructure in the Philippines, Current State, Issues and Challenges is authored by PIDS Senior Research Fellow, Dr. Adoracion M. Navarro, and Research Analyst, Mr. Jokkaz S. Latigar. The authors look into the quantity and quality of the country's road and railways and examine the issues hampering the improvement of our land transport infrastructure. The study also discussed innovative measures to improve our current and future road and railway infrastructure in the light of post-pandemic scenario, climate change, and advances in technology. So we will also hear from representatives of government agencies and the private sector that are actively working for better road connectivity and mobility. They will share with us their insights into the issue. So we have invited the Department of Transportation Assistant Secretary for Planning and Project Development, Mr. Leonel Cray P. de Velez, to share with us the department's initiatives and plans for the road and rail transport. Joining Asec Velez, our engineer Ernesto V. Alday Jr. from the Office of the Undersecretary for Planning and Public-Private Partnership Services of the Department of Public Works and Highways, and Dr. Robert Y. C. Jr., Co-convenor of Move as One Coalition. So I take this opportunity to thank our discussants for accepting our invitation. We are grateful and honored to have you at this webinar. And to all attendees, thank you for joining, and we look forward to your active participation in the open forum. Muli, magandang tanghali, and I give you now back to our moderator, Dr. Sheila.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ballesteros. Friends, before I introduce our presenters, just some quick reminders on how to join the discussion. If you have any question or comment, just use the Q&A button in Zoom. No? So I repeat, please use the Q&A button, not the chat box. Please indicate your name and organization if you want to be identified when I read the questions. To all the speakers, you may respond by typing your answers, which will be visible to all the attendees. Alternatively, you can also choose to answer the questions live during the open forum. For our live stream viewers on Facebook, we highly encourage you to participate as well. Please use the comment section on Facebook for your questions. We will accommodate as many questions as possible that are relevant to the discussion during the open forum. Okay, so with that, let us begin our conversation by listening to our featured presentation, which, as already mentioned by Dr. Ballesteros, is a study authored by Dr. Adoracion Navarro and Mr. Jokkaz Latigar. Both of them will be presenting. Dr. Navarro is a senior research fellow at PIDS. Her research interests are issues in the infrastructure sector and regional development. She has been with PIDS since 2012, with a brief pause in her stint from November 2016 to June 2022, when she was appointed Undersecretary for Regional Development at the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA. She holds a PhD in economics from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, a Master of Public Administration degree, major in economic policy management from Columbia University in New York, and a master's degree in economics also from UP Diliman. She is a Philippine Navy reservist, currently holding a commander rank. Her co-author, Mr. Jokkaz Latigar, is a research analyst at PIDS. He holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from UP Diliman, and he has done studies on human rights, infrastructure, and agriculture and rural development. Dr. Navarro and Jokkaz, you now have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you also, VP Peng, for the warm welcome. First, let me share with our audience that the main motivation for this study is that the previous Philippine Development Plan, the PDP 2017-2022, assessed that despite the previous investments on improvement and expansion projects, the transport infrastructure of the country is inadequate. Thus, the PIDS scrutinized the underlying reasons for this, specifically for road and rail sectors, water transport sector, and air transport sector. So we're presenting today only the results for road and rail, which I studied together with Mr. Jokkaz Latigar, or Joks. And we hope that you will also take time to read the studies for the water and air transport sectors done by Dr. Chris Abrigo, available in our website. Next slide, please. Let me outline the flow of our presentation. So Joks will present the current state of the stock and quality of our road and rail infrastructure and some issues. Then I will present our analysis of the challenges in the planning, programming, and implementation stages. And then I will present the derived policy insights. Let me now turn you over to Joks. Joks.
Hello, magandang hapon po sa atin lahat. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Navarro, for the introduction. And thank you also to Dr. Siar and VP Ballesteros for the preliminaries. Before I start, I would also like to acknowledge my co-RA at PIDS, Mr. Jetho Camara, for his invaluable research assistance in this study. So to start, now, I guess it's fair to assume that one way or another, we all have experience commuting via public transportation, whether via train, buses, jeepneys, taxis, tricycles, etc. And some of the long-standing issues that always emerge when we talk about land transportation is traffic or congestion. And in the case of trains, long queues. So now, these of course are observations from our experiences. These are data that direct us toward issues that are more entrenched than they appear to be. Now, with that, I will be presenting the results of our study from the review of quantitative data from international and government sources, as well as from the gathering of qualitative data from focus group discussions and key informant interviews with implementing agencies. So next slide, please. Okay, let's start with roads, the national and local roads. So the DPWH has a road classification system. So based on that, the national roads are composed of the primary, secondary, and tertiary, while the local roads, provincial, municipal, city, and barangay roads. Now, essentially, national roads are funded and managed by DPWH, while local roads by local governments. Now, the data shows that in 2021, the country's road network has a total length of more than 205,000 kilometers. No, hati na yon between national roads and local roads. Now, the figures for the national roads of more than 34,000 kilometers is already inclusive of the national bridges or mga tulay. Now, according to DPWH Bridge Management System, we have more than 8,000 bridges, which measure more than 300,000 linear meters. On the other hand, the data for local roads were estimated from our FGDs and KIIs kasi wala silang readily available for that. No, that's more than 170,000 kilometers with the following disaggregation. Now you can see on your screen for the type of local roads. Unfortunately, there are also no available data for the local bridges, because the LG's inventory is not yet complete in the time of writing the study. So that's the snapshot of the total stock of our roads. Now, when we look at trends for national roads, the time series data from 2007 to 2021 will show that there actually is a gradual increase in terms of length. From 2007, more than 29,000 kilometers lang siya, it grew to more than 34,000 kilometers in 2021. So there are several reasons for that. There are conversion of road sections, improvement of gap sections, and completion of flyovers, etc. Okay, so ano ngayon? What's the significance of these aggregate figures on us, to us? One useful indicator that can help us appreciate it is through road density. So what do we mean by road density? It is the ratio of the total length of the road network to a specified land area. So the premise is that may correlation ang high road density with highly developed areas. Why? Because a well-developed road transport sector paves the way for the creation of market access opportunities, especially for agricultural goods. It facilitates economic activities and the ease of mobility for social services. So the data shows now that there is a gradual increase of nationwide road density over the years. That in 2021, there's 10.68 kilometers of roads per 100 square kilometer of land. But of course, this national average does not tell us a complete story, because when we look at regional road densities, they actually remain low, lower than the national average, which could indicate weak connectivity sa mga regional areas natin, which of course could hamper some national development. So we've discussed the stock or the quantity of roads and bridges. Now the next slide will display some of the key findings on the quality of these infrastructure. Okay, so our study found that the quality for both the national roads and national bridges, the first two bullets you see on your screen, have actually been improving over the years. So the indicator for quality improvement is the surface type or the type of construction material used. So we want our roads to be paved, gawa sa concrete or asphalt, as compared to gravel or earth. We want also our bridges to be permanent, gawa sa concrete and steel, as compared to bailey and timber. So we see from the data that the length of paved roads have been increasing. So in 2021, there are more than 32,000 kilometers of paved national roads. So that's 98.66% of national roads. Same with permanent bridges, increasing din siya. Total of more than 386,000 linear meters or 99.71% of national bridges, also in 2021. However, may caveat. We need to highlight that since national roads play critical roles in connecting major economic centers such as cities, provincial capitals, airports, seaports, and tourism centers to each other, it follows that the presence of unpaved roads, gravel, and earth roads in 2021 would actually mean that crucial quality improvements are still needed to be done. Kasi as this could weaken connectivity. Kasi we're not only concerned about aggregate length, but also about the connectivity of this infrastructure. Another thing, local roads are not yet included in these figures. It's a whole different story for the majority of local roads because ang unpaved sa mga local roads is at 56%, so more than half. And according to a 2017 municipal roads inventory of another PIDS study, there is a large gap in the paving of municipal roads where 47.42% of the total roads from the submit data are still unpaved. Okay, so we have increasing length of paved national roads and permanent national bridges. However, again, having paved roads does not always mean having roads that are in good condition. So the DPWH conducts a visual road condition survey annually. So through this assessment, roads and bridges are categorized based on the treatment and maintenance measures they need. So may categories na good, fair, poor, bad. The good means that little to no maintenance required, only the routine maintenance. And the data shows that in 2021, only 41.22% of paved national roads and 51.03% of national bridges can be considered to be under good condition. So less than half and a little more than half. So the quality of roads, especially local roads, is crucial in consideration to last mile connectivity. This, of course, has significant implication to the delivery of social services to these areas. So, all right, now that's for the roads and bridges. So in the next slide, I will present our findings on the rail sector. All right, the rail transfer sector shows that in 2021, the country's rail network has 395 kilometers of operational routes with 87 stations and 889 train cars. So with that total, we have two rail systems. First is the Intra-Luzon Commuter Rail System, owned and operated by the PNR. And the second, the Metro Manila Mass Rail Transit Systems. Both has 3 operating lines, as you can see in the screen. So to set the context for these figures, now we need to revisit the country's railway infrastructure in the 1970s, when we have more than 1,000-kilometer railway length. Over the years, we witnessed a drastic drop in the number of regularly operating railway length that in 2016, we only have 77 kilometers. It is only in the recent years that the country began picking up. In 2021, that the total length increased to 395 as new investments and reopening of old routes, especially for the PNR lines, that expanded the existing network. So, and just a side note, there are no operational railway service for freight in the country currently. So this adds up to the problem, especially for roads leading to seaports and airports, because there are no other options but to ship via trucks, which can add to the congestion in those critical nodes, and also to the quality concerns for roads carrying those heavy loads for the trucks. So that's for the supply side in rail sector. In the next slide, we will see what the demand side has to say. Okay, so in assessing the demand for rail services, one useful indicator is the performance of rail lines in terms of passenger traffic or passenger trips. So we have that on our screens. For PNR lines, the data shows that the average number of passengers per trip declined. This suggests that the decrease in the number of trips due either to cancellations or mobility restrictions during the pandemic, among others, or the drop in absolute number of passengers. Perhaps this can be also attributed to the commuters finding better alternatives to the PNR trains following the easing of pandemic-related restrictions in 2021. Anyway, on the other hand, the table below shows also the recent declines in passenger traffic for LRT1, 2, and MRT3. So you can observe from the highlighted cells that these declines started in 2018 and 2019, which was pre-pandemic. So we can attribute this to mobility restrictions. We will see later in Dr. Navarro's presentation that these data on passenger traffic and trips are crucial because it's one of the targets of the government for the railway sector. codified in the PDP, which was to increase these figures. No, but as we see now, it actually declined. Next. So another related indicator is what you call the load factor. Now, load factor is the measure of capacity utilization of transport services like railways. So this is useful in assessing if a particular rail line is performing beyond its intended capacity. So we can use load factor to explain experiences related to congestion or long queues, ganyan. To make sense of the table you have on your screen, of the graph you have on your screen, we have a benchmark in assessing the load factor. The target average is at 60%, meaning kung more than 60, most likely congested na yung, or 60 ka na. So given that, we can see that the LRT1 and MRT3 exhibited above 60% load factors in most most years recorded. On the other hand, LRT2 also started to exhibit load factors above 60% before the height of pandemic. So that's years 2020 and 2021. So what can we conclude? No, is that it validates or supports the commuters' experiences with congestion and long queues. Next slide. All right, so in relation to load factors for the Metro Manila rail lines, the PNR trains, on the other hand, also have similar experiences regarding performance and quality, where some of the issues are listed on your screen, such as congestion, poor quality, and unsafe railway platforms, train delays, and trip cancellations. So it only goes to show that for both the PNR and Metro Manila rail lines, there's still much to be done to address this weakness in quality. So after the presentation of within country assessment of road and rail status, the next slide will show a snapshot of a cross-country comparison. All right, so recent international data shows that the country's poor transport infrastructure is hurting our competitiveness. So this is according to the Global Competitiveness Index, or the GCI of the World Economic Forum. So a little background on GCI, this 2019 iteration looked at 141 economies. So as indicators of global competitiveness, it assessed 12 pillars, and infrastructure is one of them. So the premise behind GCI is that these pillars are seen as the main drivers of productivity. And by productivity, we mean that the GCI treats productivity increase as the most important determinant of long-term economic growth. So aside from infra, we also have the pillars of ICT, health, skills, etc. Under the infrastructure pillar, there are two sub-pillars, transport and utilities. So what you see on your screen is the ranking of the Philippines among other ASEAN economies in terms of the transport sub-pillar. So as you can see, the country has the poorest showing in 2019. The number inside the square brackets above the bar charts, the 102, 102nd, means that it is the ranking, the global ranking of the Philippines versus the 141 economies, pang 102 tayo. So this transport sub-pillar has 8 indicators, namely road connectivity, quality of road infra, railroad density, efficiency of train services, airport connectivity, efficiency of air transport services, liner shipping connectivity, and efficiency of seaport activity. So this sub-pillar not only includes road and rail sectors, but also water and air transport sectors. So what this international ranking show us is that we have much to catch up on in terms of improving the quantity and quality of our road and rail infra. Now, to provide us the review of the achievement of the targets set by the government in the Road and Rail Transport Infra Program, with consideration to the planning, programming, budgeting, and implementation linkages, I'm now turning over the virtual floor to Dr. Navarro. Mama Dora.
Yeah, thank you, Jokkaz. So what I will be presenting are the challenges. So I'll mention some of the achievements, but I'll focus more on the challenges. Okay, next slide, please. So in the stages of planning, programming, investment programming, and then budgeting and implementation. Okay, in terms of plan targets in the PDP, as assessed in the StatDev monitoring report, the targets are not met. Here we provide some examples. With respect to the target in the road sector on road roughness index, rather than improvement, what we have is deterioration from the baseline of 4.62 in 2015 to 4.68 in 2019. By the way, a road roughness index of 1 to 3 means good road condition, 3 to 5 means fair, 5 to 7 means poor, and greater than 7 means bad. So we remained in that poor category. Moreover, several regions have average road roughness index of greater than 5, which means that their roads are in poor condition. So these are Cordillera Administrative Region, Western Visayas Region, Zamboanga Peninsula Region, Davao Region, and Soxargen, Region 12. So for the rail sector, there were targets on the train system optimal capacity, but these are not being reported by concerned agencies in the StatDev monitoring report that's supposedly for PDP target monitoring. So we have no way of knowing. Next slide. Target reduction in travel times were also not achieved. There were also cases when the targets are not helpful, such as oddly an increase in travel time in Metro Manila, which we are no longer showing here, but can be gleaned from the past PDP, the plan document in the previous administration. Target reduction in road accident rate is also not achieved. And then it's not reported in the monitoring reports, but the target increase in passenger trips via rail in Metro Manila was most likely not achieved given the decline in passenger traffic in recent years. In terms of policy targets, what's in the legislative agenda portion of the plan, these policy targets were also not achieved, specifically the enactment of a national transport policy and the creation of an independent regulatory body for railways. Next slide, please. Now let's go to the investment program. The program investments in the PIP or Public Investment Program 2017 to 2022, they're organized by thematic chapters. And in the 2021 update of that, the infrastructure investment program consisted of 5,586 projects with a total cost of 3,123 billion pesos. And among the infrastructure sectors, the transport sector had the highest share at 74.4%. However, the shares of the road and rail transport subsectors are not readily available. We attempted to request this actually from the NEDA central office, but the database given to us lack codes for these subsectors. So as there are 5,586 infrastructure projects in the database, now figuring out the subsector categorization based on the project titles alone would have been very time consuming. So we look at the flagship projects highlighted under the Build Bid program. Now, there are 42 road and rail projects in the updated list, and only 4 were completed by the end of the previous administration. So only 4 were completed. Let's look at the next slide. The overall investment targets, the one that I showed in the earlier slide, those targets are supposed to constitute the target public infrastructure spending of 7.4% of GDP by 2022. And as you can see in this graph, the trajectory of accomplishment based on actual disbursements from 2016 to 2021 shows that the 7.4% target may not have been achieved in 2022. In fact, for 2022, what was earmarked according to the DBM was only 5.3% of GDP. Okay, next slide, please. The agency's capacity to absorb and spend public funds remains a problem. So both DPWH and the DOTR continue to have low absorptive capacity for funds, as you can see from the indicators, the yearly indicators that we're showing in this table. So their capacity to, their absorptive capacity in terms of ability to actually spend, deteriorated from 2016 to 2017, and then it remained low afterwards. So as delays in spending and payment suggest delays in the actual delivery of projects, it is important to examine what particular implementation challenges may have caused the delays, which is done in the discussion paper and summarized in the succeeding slides. Next slide, please. Okay, implementation challenges. We've always heard that the problem is implementation. No? That is, in the Philippines now we have good policies, programs, and projects, but we often fail in the implementation of this. But what specifically are the implementation problems? So here's a deep dive on this. We uncovered the particulars through our desk research, focus group discussions, and key informant interviews. Some are persistent problems and some are newly introduced problems. First, the pandemic-related restrictions delay the right-of-way acquisition. This is a newly introduced problem, and it's a common problem in almost all regions, as revealed in monitoring reports by the regional project monitoring councils. Also, delays in DBM fund release for items under the for later release category. This is also a problem that was not spoken of candidly before, at least in our experience in doing research. Although the delays in fund releases may not be new, the articulation of this happening in the for later release budget category was not talked about as candidly as before. And it is a well-known fact that during budget deliberations, legislators in their exercise of the power of the purse insert new budget items or expansion of certain proposed budget items, no, yung previously called congressional insertions, no, but now they're in some documents they're being referred to as congressional introductions kasi bawal na yung congressional insertion supposedly after a Supreme Court ruling on the pork barrel funds. So they often do this by reducing certain proposed budget items or entirely removing them. And that happens during the budget deliberation. So starting in fiscal year 2020, yung GAA item category for the congressional introductions, no, may additional requirement before the release of funds, the president's approvals. And in previous years, it had been enough that the president exercise his or her veto power to disapprove certain congressional introductions before signing the GAA. Then some delays happened in the for later release or FLR category, and this delayed the implementation activities. For example, in 2020, no, na-release daw in August lang, and then some were released as late as December 2020. And in some cases, funds released under the FLR mode were also not the full requirement. Like in the farm to market roads, no, almost half of the aggregate budget, no RDC endorsements daw, and therefore later release funds. So that contributed to the delays. Okay, next are delays in improving road quality, that is paving, no, due to failure of some contractors to comply with the DPWH quality control program. So this is a quality control problem which can and must be solved on the ground. Next, many farm-to-market roads are still unpaved and disconnected due to erroneous practices. For example, before 2012, the construction of gravel and tire track farm-to-market roads or FMRs and having project length na as short as 100 meters, no, that was still allowed. Then to cover more geographic areas or to be able to distribute funds to more LGUs, FMR projects were then being split into short segments, so putol-putol. And then, therefore, nagkaroon ng differences in quality, and the shortness of improved road segments made upgrading interconnectivity difficult, no? But in 2012, design standards for FMRs were issued, and which are now being used to fix the problem. Standard costing of farm-to-market roads, FMR, at 12 million pesos per kilometer was also deemed not realistic. But I understand that talks have been held to raise the standard cost, and DPWH is addressing this. Political intervention in the finalization of the list of projects in the GAA is also present. There are projects in the National Expenditure Program that are being replaced by other projects during the GAA deliberation and the finalization process. Some of these congressional insertions do not undergo the usual due diligence process. Monitoring and evaluation, it's still not institutionalized. As of now, the DPWH monitoring is focused on performance governance scorecard only, and that still and at that stage of strengthening its M&E setup. There's also currently no specific office dedicated to conduct M&E. And it's the DPWH is still building the capacity of its regional and district offices on the importance of post-evaluation. Nevertheless, there are M&E processes for foreign assisted projects kasi these are required by ODA partners. The Mandanas-Garcia ruling will affect the timely completion and the quality of infrastructure projects. And actually, it's starting to affect. No? This is because of the lack of technical capability in some LGUs. No? There are provinces and municipalities which are still weak in procurement and even in construction supervision. The large gap in upgrading the quality of local roads due to numerous issues, no, that's also an implementation challenge. No? For example, the natural calamities frequently occur. There are delays and the incomplete removals of obstructions in project sites, and there are difficulties in materials handling and manpower and supply chain problems. And these are these numerous problems were exacerbated during the height of the pandemic. Okay, next slide. The implementation challenges for rail projects naman. So right-of-way issues stalling the completion of projects no matter how early or efficient the other stages in project implementation were. So that's a main challenge. And we illustrate this using the MRT case. No problems in right-of-way acquisition in MRT7 emerged in 2018. The acquisition of a 33-hectare lot in Bulacan for the MRT7 train depot reached the point when the OTR filed expropriation proceedings. Then the property owner questioned the expropriation in Malolos Regional Trial Court. Then na-move yung proposed right-of-way site to Quezon City rather than in Malolos, Bulacan, Quezon City na. That was in 2019. However, the real estate company which owns the lot challenged naman the expropriation kasi the amount offered according to them was way below what was required by law. Then finally, last year, May 31, it was announced that a 20-hectare property in San Jose del Monte, Bulacan has been secured. Another challenge, lack of consistency in decision-making. And that is, for example, due to changes in leadership and attendant legal disputes when original agreements are not honored. This is particularly true when politicians treat infrastructure projects as their political legacy. Although this problem is more frequent in LGU level projects because of the shorter term for local chief executives na 3 years lang for one term. Examples at the national level are also present, especially in the case of big ticket infrastructure projects. And one example that is often cited is yung construction of the unified Grand Central Station or the Common Station for MRT3. Okay, next slide. So let's look at the policy insights that we've derived. Our analysis of quantity and quality indicators nga as summarized by Jokkaz earlier, has shown that the Philippines continues to suffer from inadequate and poor quality of road and rail infra. And then we digging deeper our discussion paper finds persistent as well as newly introduced implementation problems. No, so what are the derived policy insights? First, planning for the long term can help address the persistent problems. No, a long-term national transport infrastructure plan that is legislated can improve the anticipation by stakeholders of future implementation activities, and also help in the orderly preparation for requirements like land use requirements, right of way, no, financing options, exploration of that, and the structuring of that, the management of political interest, and the capacity building for implementers. It would be ideal for Congress to enact a long-term transport plan, pero habang wala pa, in the meantime, the prescribed principles in the existing NEDA board issuance of the National Transport Policy can already be adopted, no? Although with a weaker enforcement power relative to a legislation. So that can be adopted by implementing agencies. No? Transparency in reporting to and discussions at the interagency committees such as the NEDA board Infracom and the Infracom Interagency Technical Committee on Transport Planning on non-compliance with the prescribed principles in the NTP may help enforcement in the meantime. So if there's documentation and that's always being talked about, no, there's transparency in reporting, candidness in discussion, that may help enforcement in the meantime. Now, given the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas-Garcia case and the devolution of projects, the national government must continue its capacity building programs for LGUs because they will have a bigger mandate and there are many weaknesses in their capacities. At the same time, the completion and integration of local roads databases must be fast-tracked kasi accurate information will be important in prioritizing areas of support. We also need to introduce transit-oriented development in cities outside Metro Manila through sustainable infrastructure, master planning, and giving budget for that. No? The failures in Metro Manila urban rail transport systems are sources of lessons for cities outside Metro Manila. And we think that performance audits of these systems and benchmarking with cities in other countries could reinforce the lessons. Okay, next slide, please. Now, with respect to the for later release funds problem, the issue is complex and it has deep political economy ramifications. Now, on one hand, meron tayong legislators who always find ways to insert new or expanded items in the budget. And on the other hand, the president could impose its will on legislators by having post-GAA procedures that could decide on the release of funds for congressional insertions on a case-by-case basis. So it seems to be a battle of wheels between two major influences on project implementation, and the Filipino public is caught in between. No? So it's difficult, but we have to come up with recommendations, which are as follows. No? At the national level, seeking reform champions for minimizing congressional introductions and fast-tracking executive approvals is necessary. At the regional level, one solution that could be attempted is for government officials to strengthen the practice of project identification and prioritization at the Regional Development Council level, or RDC. No? The tracking of how many and what percentage of RDC-endorsed projects make it to the GAA can be institutionalized. Having greater transparency in the accounting for and reporting of the RDC priorities, as well as readiness of the projects in the RDC list can also help. It's not part of our 2022 discussion paper, but I read yesterday carefully yung GAA 2023 and the budget circular issued 2 weeks ago. And it states there that new programs, activities, projects not existing in the previous GAA is subject to the approval of the President. Yun yung nasa budget circular. And the release of funds under new items of appropriations requiring SARO is subject to the clearance or approval of the Office of the President. So right now we're crossing our fingers and sincerely hoping that these are not items considered congressional introductions na not yet implementation ready, or the Office of the President may consider na still lacking in requirements. So we're hoping that the project these are really implementation ready. Okay, and next slide, and that wraps up our presentation. And for those who have not yet downloaded and read our discussion paper, I invite you to do so. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Navarro, Adora, and Jokkaz. That was a really enlightening presentation, and looking at the implementation challenges you discussed. Well, most of them are governance and political issues. And just like in other sectors, these issues are pulling us down, and the public is the one that suffers the most. Okay, we can unpack and discuss them in more lengthily during the open forum. I saw in the Q&A box that there are already a number of interesting questions related to your presentation. But for now, we have to park those questions because we still have the insights of our discussants. Okay, but at this point, let us have a quick break. Let us know the pulse of our audience, and everyone joining us on Zoom and Facebook is welcome to join. May I request our webinar team to flash our poll question for this week? Okay, so having heard the presentation of Dr. Navarro, what do you think should we prioritize to improve the state of our country's road and rail transport infrastructure? Okay, again, what should we prioritize to improve the state of our country's road and rail transport infrastructure? To answer, please click the Mentimeter link available on the Zoom chat box and in the Facebook comment section. So just open the chat box to find the Mentimeter link. Okay, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you feel we need to prioritize, so you can give up to 5 answers. Right, Mike? 5 answers. Okay. I received a message from a participant asking for sample answers. Okay. Well, if you ask me, I think we need to install more bike lanes to encourage more Filipinos to use bicycles. That's for me. Another priority for me would be to have more farm-to-market roads, as these are crucial for rural and agricultural development. Well, your answer may be something else. It may be related to other issues. Okay, other priorities. So, flash on the screen are the results on Mentimeter. So, let's have a look. Okay, I can see there active transport. That's one of the most okay, one of the most common answers is active transport. What else? Quality, good governance. Okay, transparency. What else? Okay, so our top answers are quality, active transport, transparency, and I think good governance. Okay, also farm to market road, is it there? Sorry, because the screen continues to change. Okay, monitoring also is there, and also maintenance. Okay, there you have it. We can flash it again later if you wish. Okay, so at this point, thank you for participating in our poll. And it is now time to listen to the reactions and insights of our discussant. And we are honored to have with us this afternoon 3 experts, two from the government and 1 from civil society. For our first discussant, let us all welcome Assistant Secretary for Planning and Project Development, Leonel Cray de Velez of the Department of Transportation. Prior to his current post, Asec de Velez was the project manager of the North-South Commuter Railway System. He has been involved in several transportation projects, including the Regional Airports Public-Private Partnership or PPP, NAIA PPP, PNR South Long Haul, Mindanao Railway, and Subic Clark Railway. He joined the DOTR in 2015 after obtaining a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Service degree, major in International Economics from Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service. Asec de Velez, you now have the virtual floor.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Will PIDS be flashing the presentation that I prepared, or should we just start discussing?
Team, do you have the PowerPoint?
Yes, while the team is presenting it, essentially with the next slide, I agree with the findings of the discussion paper. There's not much to add. Having been a part of the Duterte administration during the last 6 years and towards the tail end of the Aquino administration in 2015, yes, these are the same challenges. These are the challenges that we've faced as implementing agencies. So there's not much to add. I would say I would generally agree with the conclusions and policy insights. But I think one of the major things that people want to understand is, where do we go from here? I think the writers rightly mentioned this was for the Philippine Development Plan 2017 to 2022. I think right now we're in the process of really communicating that we now have a Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028 for the medium term. This is the second medium-term development plan in the country, which is in line with the Ambition 2040. And I think that's where I kind of want to look at in my response, is that yes, our railway transportation is not where it needs to be. Next slide, please. We're trying our best, so we do have ongoing projects such as the North-South Commuter Railway, the Metro Manila Subway. These will improve to some degree our transportation system here in Manila. But as we know, Manila is not the entire country. We have the rest of the Philippines to really work on. There are transportation issues outside NCR, Metro Cebu, Metro Davao, many of the regional centers. And some of the goals that we have discussed in the department, at least with the railway sector. Apologies, I'm still wearing my railway hat for today. But obviously, there's a saying, if you don't have a destination, if you don't know what your destination, you're kind of lost. So with the thrust of the government right now to really elevate our transportation system to international standards, to global standards when it comes to affordability, comfort, efficiency, accessibility, the question then we have to ask ourselves as government, as the DOTR, is what does this mean? How do we translate this into actual projects, to policies, putting numbers, putting targets actually, and what is our vision essentially for the transportation system? And just to focus on the railway sector for today, again, our target, our vision is for our railway system to be globally competitive. So that's the long-term objective. Rome wasn't built in a day. I can't promise that tomorrow suddenly with the snap of the fingers, everything is fixed. But this is our long-term, our medium to long-term plan, is to really catch up. So we've been trying to catch up for our mass transportation system. Again, just to broaden the discussion to mass transportation in general. We want to be regionally competitive. What do I mean by that, or what can that mean? With our ASEAN neighbors, I think those of us who may have had the privilege to visit other countries such as Hong Kong, Singapore, we have experienced some of the good mass transportation systems there. So perhaps with regionally competitive mass transit, that's what we mean after this Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028. But just to further put some potential targets for discussion out there, again, right now, maybe we want to connect more of our provinces. Perhaps a third of our provinces should have railway systems, heavy rail at that. I think it was mentioned by one of the writers that currently we do not have cargo rail. We did have cargo rail in the past, PNR, Panay Railway, Cebu Railway. There was cargo railway previously, but that's something that we are planning on reviving. that is in the Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028. In Chapter 12, cargo railway is a priority of the government. Again, as mentioned, Metro Manila is not the center of the Philippines. It's not the center of the world. We have other areas such as Metro Cebu, Metro Davao, Cagayan de Oro, which was identified as the fourth metropolitan area in the National Spatial Strategy, Metro Cavite, Pampanga, Metro Batangas, Lucena, all these places. And we are looking at developing and constructing at least our metropolitan railway line per metropolis, per metropolitan area over the next 6 years. Again, interregional railways, we need to continue investing in this, possibly expanding this to 800 kilometers of railway, starting perhaps from the PNR, extending it northward to Ilocos, to Cagayan. So this is, again, perhaps the vision, the framework that what we're looking at. But just to provide more context and provide more data of where we currently are, perhaps the next slide will better inform us. Oh, sorry, this is just definition. So this is what we mean. This is what we mean currently by railways. So we have what we call interregional railways. So these are long haul passenger and freight. We have the metropolitan railways, which cover a metropolitan area. So these are broadly the definitions we use. Next slide. So, but just to give context of where we are, as mentioned that currently the existing railway projects that we have on the MRT1, LRT1, LRT2, MRT3, and we are building, for example, the NSCR and Metro Manila Subway. But even if when we finish these railway projects, this might not be enough. This will not be enough if we want to be regionally competitive. NCR, again, focusing on NCR, we will be left behind by 2035 if we do not continue investment in our mass transportation system. Again, just on a rail hat perspective. So looking at it from a rail density perspective, meaning kilometers of railway per square kilometer. So you can see in the table, I won't go into too much detail. Tokyo is kind of the outlier. I think Tokyo is kind of gold standard for this one. People think of Japan as our ambition, and we should be ambitious when it comes to our railway system. But again, we need to keep catching up. We need to keep investing in our mass transportation system. So we need to keep investing. The red line is essentially NCR. And again, if we do status quo, if we don't continue investment, we'll be left behind by our peer cities like Ho Chi Minh. Bangkok has already surpassed us, same with Jakarta. There. Next slide. I think this is the, yeah, so again, we do want to promote more modal shift to mass transportation. This information is based on the 2017 JICA study. So we just comparing it again with regional peers, we want to push this further up. So again, building more railways, building more bus rapid transit, improving our bus systems. Unfortunately, we only still have data for this one in Metro Manila, but we are looking at collecting more data elsewhere in the country. Next, please, next slide. Again, we're lagging behind with our interregional railways coverage. In Japan, for example, all of their prefectures, their provinces are connected or have railways, interregional railways. Vietnam, Thailand, a good part of their country has operational railway. Obviously, we are an archipelagic country, but that should not prevent us from developing our interregional railway network. Next. Again, there was actually a study in 2018 that really identified cities outside Metro Manila which have the potential for mass transit facilities, mass transportation systems. Basically, the study showed that or suggested that any metropolis with a GDP of greater than $5 billion by 2030 is a candidate for a mass transit system. So next slide. This was a quick and dirty, next slide. So this is a quick and dirty analysis of what the trajectory is for some of our metropolitan areas. Again, this is conservative, just assuming a straight line annual GDP growth of 2.5% over the next couple of years. Obviously, you can see what happened during the pandemic and its impact on the GDPs of certain metropolitan areas. But overall, we are looking at potentially several metropolitan areas that are really candidate for a mass transit system. And the objective really is to be proactive when it comes to our mass transit facility. We do not want to repeat, again, the same mistakes we've had here in NCR, where we're just reacting to the lack of mass transportation. So mass transportation supply. So there. Next, not sure if there's one more slide. Yeah, so just again, going back, we need to have a vision for our mass transit system. Talking about some of the comments that were mentioned earlier about during the METI, the graph. Again, active transportation is a top priority of the government. That is in the Philippine Development Plan. We will prioritize in the hierarchy of road users, pedestrians, cyclists. Active transport users are number one. Anyone can read that in the Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028. I invite everyone to read Chapter 12, the expansion and upgrading of our infrastructure. And I'll be happy to discuss more if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asec Velez of the Department of Transportation. We'll hear more from him during the open forum. But now let us listen to our second discussant, who is from the Department of Public Works and Highways. Let us all welcome Engineer Ernesto Alday, Jr. of the Office of the Undersecretary for Planning and Public-Private Partnership Services. Engineer Alday has been in the public service for 20 years. He is currently holding the position of Engineer 4 at the DPWH and has been an active member of various professional organizations, including the Road Engineering Association of the Philippines, where he served as National President of the Young Engineers and Professionals from 2019 to 2022. He has participated in various local and international forums and conferences on sustainable and resilient infrastructure development and leadership development. Engineer Alday, sir, the floor is now yours. Engineer Alday, you may proceed. Engineer? Okay, I think we lost his connection. At this point, may I jump to our third discussant, and we can go back to Engineer Alday when he is back in the virtual, back in Zoom. Okay, so let's now hear from our next discussant. We are honored to have with us the co-convenor of the Move As One Coalition, Dr. Robert C. Move As One Coalition is a civil society organization pushing for sound policies in the transportation and urban sectors. Dr. C writes a weekly column entitled Mobility Matters for the Manila Times, and he taught development management at the Asian Institute of Management during the early 1980s. Most of his professional career has been with the Asian Development Bank, where he worked for 24 years. In 2013, Dr. C joined the government and served as advisor at the Department of Transportation until 2017. Dr. C holds a doctorate from Cornell University in the field of city and regional planning. Dr. C, sir, the floor is now yours.
Thanks so much, Sheila, and hello to everyone this afternoon. I'm really honored to be invited to give comments on this very interesting and timely paper. So let me just jump into it. The authors deserve high commendation for focusing on this very important subject and for providing a very rich analysis of why railway and road projects are delayed or underperforming. The transportation crisis is a very real one for all of us, and we need to dig deeper to understand how we have reached this point and what solutions are available. Delayed implementation is a fundamental concern, and the analysis of specific constraints and obstacles is the most valuable contribution of this paper. But like all, very valued studies, what this study also does is it provides a very good springboard for discussion on follow-on policy issues and concerns. And so I want to go into some of those very important, significant follow-on issues and concerns. There is definitely an infrastructure deficit. However, we need to ask ourselves, whether we are building the right kind of infrastructure and for whom. When resources are limited, we need to be selective about where we spend our money. Observing the huge mobility difficulties faced today by Filipinos, the solutions lie not so much in doing more of the same better. It's also about revising our priorities, our strategies and objectives after understanding where past approaches have not worked. So let me start by saying something about the road transport sector. This is a sector which includes road and bridge infrastructure, but also has many other components. First, we need to look at the functionality or utility of our roads for all road users, including the largest segments of our population. All of us are pedestrians. And we can actually look closer at the potential to increase bicycle use. You know, already 29%. Now, I'm going to cite some statistics. This is from a Social Weather Stations survey in 2022. 29% of Filipino households use bicycles. And out of that population, actually also 21% of Filipino households use bicycles for essential activities like getting to jobs, schools, and markets. So for every household with a car, there are 4 to 5 households with a bicycle. So this is quite significant. And these statistics, I think, we should use every time we can. For the longest time, a large part of our infrastructure budget has been spent on building roads and bridges to enable faster travel by private motor vehicles. The main assumption was that more roads to accommodate more and more motor vehicles was beneficial for our society. We have discovered very painfully over many decades that expanding roads for private motor vehicles in urban areas does not solve traffic. Traffic relief from road expansion is usually only temporary because of the phenomenon of induced demand. Road expansion and the easing of traffic by expanding road space attracts increased motor vehicle use. And before long, traffic and pollution are back to where they were earlier, or sometimes worse. We need to break out of this damaging cycle of building more roads in cities to accommodate an ever-increasing number of private motor vehicles. As they say, curing obesity by buying larger pants is not a sustainable or effective approach. Today, car owners, myself, and perhaps many others in our room, many others included, comprise only about 6% of households nationwide, only about 6%. And in Greater Manila, car-owning households account for only 12%. This is again another important statistic. We, car users, represent not only a small minority, but one that is already privileged to be able to travel in isolation and with relative comfort and convenience. Our urban roads are filled every day with cars, but it is because roads are prioritized for private motor vehicle use. The key point here is that roads and bridges still deserve to be an infrastructure priority, but they should be designed and managed to serve not only private motor vehicles, but more particularly Filipinos on foot, on bicycles, and on public transport vehicles. We are all familiar with the outcome of roads that are designed to serve private motor vehicles. When the roads are built or expanded, oftentimes sidewalks are left out or reduced to almost nothing. Footbridges are built in order to remove ground-level pedestrian crossings so that cars can move faster. Pedestrians are made to walk longer distances. Persons with disability and those unable to climb stairs become less mobile. And where sidewalks exist, they are usually too narrow, blocked by parked cars, or littered with numerous hazards and cracks on pavements, making them difficult to use. While the small minority with cars are offered a generous subsidy in terms of free use of public roads, the majority who are carless end up with more difficult journeys. The good news, though, is that our existing roads and bridges can be reoriented, can be repurposed to serve a wider range of road users instead of mainly private motor vehicles. Some of the mixed traffic lanes can be converted into dedicated lanes for public transport, such as what we are seeing today on the EDSA busway on EDSA. You can also convert mixed traffic lanes back into wider sidewalks or protected lanes for bicycles, enabling many more people to travel efficiently using the same road space. And in doing so, our infrastructure, our road infrastructure assets become more productive and deliver a larger economic benefit. In the end, traffic gets to flow better. And I want to go back to the point also mentioned by our authors about the density also in our road density in especially our urban areas, and the in a way the reduced growth in terms of additional road space. And this points to perhaps a strategy of making existing roads more efficient and productive by making them more people-oriented instead of simply expanding road space further to accommodate more motor vehicles. So this is one of the things that could be worked on. Instead of everyone being stuck in traffic, those using the most efficient travel modes, walking, cycling, and public transport, get to their destinations faster and with more predictability. This road environment creates a virtuous cycle by encouraging car users to leave their cars at home and shift to sustainable travel modes, thereby reducing road congestion, pollution, and carbon emissions. So to execute this type of road transformation, the most important ingredient is political will. My second main comment is that the priority and attention given to public transport should extend beyond railways. the bulk of public transport trips today is by road-based public transport. So this means our tricycles, jeepneys, UV Express, buses, taxis. Today, only a small fraction of trips is via our rail systems. And yet spending on road-based public transport, either for capacity building, vehicle replacement, or for better infrastructure, things like depots and garages, stops, terminals, dedicated lanes, bus rapid transit, the spending thus far has been negligible. We should not be at all surprised why road-based public transportation remains inadequate and inconvenient in our cities. A study by the Move as One Coalition found that 98% of the 2 trillion flagship transport infrastructure pipeline was allocated to the rail sector, with only 2% going to road-based public transport. So this is really quite a big imbalance. And even looking today at the 2023 national budget, we still see the same imbalance and neglect of the road-based public transport sector. So we hope the authors can also look into this aspect of our infrastructure deficit. Railways are definitely high priority, very much needed, and should continue to occupy a good part of our infrastructure investment spending. But placing all our public transport investment in railways means that road-based public transport becomes starved of resources. So railways, we know, are also higher cost and require longer gestation to become operational. A more balanced investment mix, which includes investments in active transport, as well as road-based public transport, will be needed in order to deliver earlier and more widespread results. Another very important contribution of the paper is to highlight the performance measures and targets of our public agencies. When road infrastructure agencies pursue a target of increasing vehicle speeds on our roads, this means that the needs of motor vehicle owners are automatically prioritized. So, without more people-oriented metrics, the needs of other road users, those who are not in motor vehicles, their needs are often forgotten. Enabling vehicles to move faster may also be in direct conflict with the objective of safer roads. Therefore, one of the most important reforms for Philippine urban transportation is to abandon vehicle speed targets and replace these with metrics that reward safe and efficient movement of people and goods. A cause for optimism, as mentioned earlier by also the authors and Asec Leo, is the recently released Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028, which highlighted the need for major investments in active transport, road-based public transport, road safety, and accessibility. So I recommend that all of us, like Asec Leo has mentioned, all of us should have a look at that chapter 12 on, transport and connectivity. The medium-term plan also recognizes that government spending should have a balanced mix of transport investments in order to deliver timely and broad-based results. And again, I just want to say it to underscore, the very significant policy statement that pedestrians and cyclists will be accorded highest priority in the hierarchy of road users. So we should try to make this real and meaningful. Going forward, the major challenge will be to give full meaning to the noble and worthy aspirations in PDP 2023 to 2028. One of the most difficult tasks will be to convince our national and local officials that urban roads need to be prioritized for the majority who are not car owners. Up until now, political will has been insufficient to overcome the natural resistance to change. I look forward to further studies by our authors and by PIDS on Philippine public transport systems and active transport facilities, so that the large majority without cars is able to benefit from our urban roads. For our roads to benefit all road users, mindsets need to change, and evidence-based analysis, as our authors have delivered in this paper, is one of the most powerful tools to accomplish this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Robert C. Sir Robbie, for your insightful remarks. Indeed, as we endeavor to improve our current situation, it is important to ask whether we are really building the right infrastructure and for whom. Are we just favoring the car owners? And also, we also mentioned about the unintended consequence of the road expansion. It's really important to address that. And he also mentioned about the need to have a balanced investment mix, taking into consideration both our road-based and rail transport sector. We'll hear more from Sir Robbie during the open forum. And I think Engineer Alday is back. Okay, so friends, let's hear from let's hear from the Department of Public Works and Highways. And we have with us today Engineer Ernesto Alday of the Office of the Undersecretary for Planning and Public-Private Partnership Services. Engineer, you may proceed. Engineer Alday?
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, you may proceed, sir.
Thank you. A pleasant afternoon to all. First of all, we would like to express our gratitude to the Philippine Institute for Development Studies for inviting the PWH to be part of the PIDS public webinar to give insights on the Philippine road infrastructure. Also, we'd like to commend the authors of the Road and Rail Transport Infrastructure, Dr. Adoracion Navarro and Mr. Jokkaz Latigar. With regards to the current state and issues on road infrastructure, we would like to share with you the department's strategic thrust and policies to improve and accelerate infrastructure development. Next slide, please. As the country's engineering construction arm of the government, DPWH implements more than half of the government's infrastructure spend. DPWH actual disbursement increased by 217% or 2.5 trillion from 1.2 trillion pesos from 2011 to 2015 to 3.7 trillion pesos from 2017 to 2022. The following are the department's policies in improving efficiency. ISO certification ensures that DPWH performs its interrelated processes and its services with international standards. 24/7 call center to address queries and complaints. For 2022, DPWH was recognized by the Civil Service Commission as one of the number one agency with the highest complaint resolution for the past decade. Also, DPWH was chosen as a pilot agency by the Anti-Red Tape Authority Program on Process Streamlining and Process Improvement. DPWH is using digital applications for planning, design, procurement, and contract management. Geotagging infrastructure projects will provide a more transparent and accurate reporting of project accomplishments. DPWH will further expand utilization of digital technologies and transformation for good governance in all aspects of project management. We will enhance and update our performance governance system and performance management system to improve efficiency and to address right-of-way issues. Processing of the ROW claims were delegated to head of the implementing units, streamlined right-of-way documentary requirements, revised right-of-way manual was issued last August 2021, created a legal division in every regional office. We also want to promote participatory governance by strengthening public consultations in the planning and implementation of projects. We also impose liquidated damages for erring contractors. Also required contractors to bill for completed work to improve disbursement rate. Next slide, please. To improve connectivity, the department will improve the Maharlika and Nautical Highway network to connect north and south backbones of the country. We will expand the country's high standard highway expressway from 510 kilometers to 1,816 kilometers based on a master plan conducted by JICA through ODA and PPP. We will promote seamless and inclusive connectivity through the construction of inter-island linkages bridge projects. We will also implement Metro Manila Logistics Improvement Program, where we will build or construct additional bridges crossing Pasig River, Marikina River, and Mangaran Floodway. We will also implement asset preservation program and promote active transport and zero carbon footprint by building more bike lanes and pedestrian infrastructure. And we want to make road infrastructure safe, gender responsive, and user friendly. Next slide, please. The government will also continue to provide and improve connectivity to areas and sectors such as agriculture, trade, industry clusters, micro, small, and medium enterprises, and tourism development areas. The development framework of the DPI-DPWH Convergence Program, Roll It 2.0, Logistics Efficiency and Transport Seamlessness to Enhance Agribusiness Trade, or Let's It, focuses on the identification and prioritization of projects that will enhance food security and logistics efficiency. The Tourism Road Infrastructure Program with the Department of Tourism is aligned with the strategic direction of the National Tourism Development Plan to improve access and connectivity to tourism gateways, service centers, and tourism sites. The government will also continue to enhance linkages and access to seaports, airports, rail stations to further improve the logistics, transport, economic activities in key industry hubs under the Kalsada tungo sa Paliparan, Velez at Daungan, or Katuparan program with the Department of Transportation. We also prioritize agri-infrastructure support program in partnership with the Department of Agriculture by building more farm-to-market roads, farm-to-mill roads. Preparation of farm-to-market network master plan will provide a detailed framework and strategic direction for delivery of an inclusive and sustainable FMR projects across the country. Next slide, please. The following are the Department of Public Works and Highways key strategic infrastructure programs that are aligned with the 2023-2028 Philippine Development Plan, and consistent with the President's 8-point socio-economic agenda to reduce the transport and logistic costs and ensure food security. We will continue to address traffic congestion through the construction of expressways, highways, bypasses, diversion roads, flyovers, interchanges, and underpasses. We will prioritize projects that will provide seamless and inclusive connectivity, such as inter-island linkage bridge projects, improvement of north and south backbone, connect gaps and missing links along national roads. The department will also continue to implement projects that will make communities resilient and sustainable by building flood control projects, social infrastructure projects, and active transport programs. Next slide, please. One of the priority program of the PWH is the Philippine High Standard Highway Network Program. Expanding the country's highways and expressways will lessen the overall concentration of population and development in urban areas and give way to regional development. DPWH target to increase the current high standard highways and expressways from 510 kilometers to about 1,800 kilometers based on a master plan on high standard highway network development plan phases 1 and 2. Included in this program is the Jokkaz is the Davao City Bypass construction project, which involves the construction of the country's first ever long-distance mountain tunnel. Next slide, please. One of the game-changing program of the department is the Luzon Spine Expressway Network. It involves the construction of about 1,200 kilometers, and once completed, the travel time from Ilocos to Bicol will be reduced from 20 hours to just about 9 to 10 hours. Notable completed projects under this program are TPLEX, NLEX Harbor Link Segment 10, and Metro Manila Skyway Stage 3. Targeted to be completed this year are the NLEX-SLEX Connector Road, Laredale Bypass Stage 3, and the Central Luzon Link Expressway. Next slide, please. The Metro Manila Logistics Improvement Program involves the construction of new bridges crossing Pasig River, Marikina River, and Mangaan Floodway. This will provide alternative linkages between the major thoroughfares and increase the number of usable roadways that will decongest traffic in EDSA and other major roads in Metro Manila. The completed bridge projects are the Binondo Intermurus Bridge, Estrella Pantolion Bridge, and the BGC Ortigas Center Link Road project. The additional 6 projects are targeted to be completed this year. Next slide, please. The Inter-Island Linkage Mega Bridge Program will connect various islands of the country through the construction of short and long span bridges with a total length of about 88 kilometers. DPWH is fast-tracking the implementation of Pangil Bay Bridge, which is targeted to be completed this year. The groundbreaking ceremony of the Samal Island Davao City Connector Project was attended by the President last October 2022. These are only some of the priority projects of DPWH that aim to improve connectivity and reduce transport and logistics costs that are consistent with the strategy framework of the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028 to build better, more, and faster. Again, maraming salamat po. Thank you po.
And thank you very much, Engineer Alday, for your updates regarding the initiatives of the Department of Public Works and Highways. Okay, so at this point, our authors may have something to say in response to the remarks of our discussants. Adora,
Yes, thank you for the very good discussions and reactions from our discussants, Dr. Roby, Engineer Alday, and Asec Leo. And thank you also for sharing the updates on kasi that's a very important solution, no? Having projects, having programs, no, that will address our inadequacy in the stock and quality of our road and rail transport infrastructure. Let me mention specifically yung public transport issues discussed by Doc Roby. I think it's very, very important, and although it's not part of our coverage kasi the focus nga is on the road infrastructure, kaya more on the quantity and the quality. But public transport systems like bus systems, BRT, and including light rail, although medyo may parang konting issue. Ang Move as One Coalition, our investments are more focused on rail-based public transport rather than road-based public transport. That's a valid issue. So that's a separate topic. Now we hope can be studied by the PIDS also. It's not yet in the pipeline, and let me share na it's not only me and Jokkaz who can do a future study on that, but we have another fellow who is specializing in transport, and that is Dr. Chris Abrigo. And outside PIDS, because this is an important issue, I think that can be studied also. No? Perhaps if the DOTR has funds for that, no, it's a very, very important issue. Perhaps you can make space for that. And because the Move as One Coalition, as I have noticed, parang you're very much focused on Metro Manila. No, perhaps you would like to expand to the regions, no, the coalition building, and there are participants from the regions in this Zoom room, no. Okay, participants from the regional development councils, the RDCs nga pala, their co-chair is from the private sector. Perhaps you would like to help in the coalition building. I recognize the importance of civil society in improving the state of our infrastructure. So suggestion lang. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adora. No, we have received a number of interesting questions from our participants, but before I read them, actually our speakers have answered almost half of the questions. No?
I answered some of them, Sheila. Kaya lang,
no problem. I can select some of them.
Yeah, please select kasi 28
yes.
Now. No,
that's right. That's right.
To answer everything.
That really shows that this topic is very interesting and relevant. No, but before I read some of the questions, perhaps we can spend a bit more time to clarify or expound on the points you mentioned and our discussants mentioned. For example, you and Jokkaz discuss about the poor absorptive capacity of the DPWH and the DOT when it comes to spending public funds. And may we hear from our DPWH and the OTR officials their response to this finding, and how are your agencies addressing this issue? Can we start from si Asec Velez, sir, please?
Sorry, can you repeat part of the early question? I didn't catch that.
Okay, it's about the poor absorptive capacity of your agency as well as the DOTR, the DPWH and the DOTR when it comes to spending public funds. So may we hear your response to this finding, and how is your agency? I can ask Engineer Alday later, but how is the DOTR addressing this issue?
Yes, we agree about the data comes straight from DBM, so there's no disputing that. But just to explain, give context to that, it's if you look at the absolute amounts, because we're looking at the percentages. In terms of absolute amounts, meaning the amount of money we've actually dispersed, it's grown substantially But yes, the problem, if you look at it from a percentage-based absorptive capacity, is still low. But from an absolute number perspective, we were able to disburse billions of pesos for many of our major flagship infrastructure projects. So what are examples of that? As I mentioned, the NSCR, the Metro Manila Subway. I guess one of the things we do admit is because this is the first subway in the Philippines, the NSCR is so big that the birth pains, we call them the birth pains internally, in like managing such large infrastructure projects did get overwhelming at the start. But with the support of some of our consultants, some of our engineers from JICA, from the ADB, we were able to catch up. So if you look at our overall budget performance, actually the amount of how much DBM gives us every year now moving forward, we've been receiving record budgets for these projects because we have been able to gain the trust and confidence, not only of the DBM, but also of our members of the House of Representatives and members of the Senate. So yes, it still looks bad from a percentage based, but we're looking at it from if you look at it from an absolute figures perspective, it has been growing. But yes, we're still trying to catch up when it comes to disbursement. What are the innovations we are now trying to introduce to the project? One of the key changes that we've adopted for the North-South Commuter Railway, the NSCR, is using the ADB e-disbursement system. So we are now really becoming digitized with our billings, with our payments. This is part, obviously, of our transparency initiative, the digitalization initiative. So we have adopted the ADB system for paying, for example, our contractors, our suppliers. So that's how we're improving our disbursement rate, by you really using digital tools to lessen the processing time of paper, because it does take time to physically transfer pieces of paper. But doing everything electronically means everything is instant. We can reduce some of the time delays just with the processing of payments. So these are some of the initiatives we're working with our development partners such as JICA and ADB, adopting these more innovative digitized processing for our payments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Asec Velez. And Engineer Alday?
Good afternoon. Likewise, what said Asec Velez said, if we look into absolute amount, the figures also the disbursement rate or value in terms of amount significantly increased. From around 15 years ago, the figures only disbursed around 90 to 100 billion pesos. But as of 2021, we were able to disburse around 668 billion pesos. And in 2022, we disbursed around 785 billion pesos. This is 17% what we disbursed in 2021. We applied different strategies to improve our disbursement rate and obligation rate, as mentioned in my presentation earlier. So we address right-of-way issues. We adapt digital applications to monitor and to monitor projects. So in terms of value, DPWH increase in disbursement in terms of value as well. That's
okay. Thank you, Engineer Alday. The second point is with regards to this important issue made by Sir Robbie, by Dr. C, regarding non-motorized forms of transportation such as bikes. And it seems that the current policy measures are favoring more, solutions that prefer or favor the car owners. No, so what is the government doing in terms of promoting, let's say, biking, having more bike lanes? What is the DOTR or the DPWH doing?
But with DPWH, ma'am, if it's feasible, when we construct new roads or bypasses, we already incorporate design for biking. So if it's feasible, and we have also a program with DOTR in building bike lanes in metropolitan areas as well. So, DPW is also prioritizing active transport as well as building more pedestrian-friendly infrastructure.
And you're doing this not just in Metro Manila, but also in other cities in the country?
Yes.
I also challenge and dispute that statement. I think we keep repeating it that in the Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028, Chapter 12, I can probably cite the exact page, but I forgot it right now. Highest priority is given to active transportation users, pedestrians, cyclists, active mobility users. You will find there the policy statements and strategies of the government. It's stated there, we will develop active transport facilities, promote at-grade intersections, provide end-of-trip facilities, provide cover for pedestrians, and for these to be included as last-mile initiatives when connecting our other modes of transit. So I disagree with that statement that it's not the government's priority. It's very clearly stated in the Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028.
Thank you very much, Asec Velez. Well, the plan really sounds good, but we of course we look forward to having it implemented. Okay, and I think Dr. Robert C has something to say. Sir, please.
Yeah, Sheila, I just want to also commend DPWH. You know, we in Move As One, we sent an FOI request at one point to ask about the bike lane construction of DPWH over the last 3 years. And we were actually very pleasantly surprised that DPWH, you know, looking at all the regions, reports that it has constructed 1,778 kilometers of bike lanes nationwide. Now, of course, some of these are just paint. Some of these are, you know, have better protection. Some are fully protected and fully separated. So they have DPWH has a design guideline for bike lanes, and these bike lanes are classified into type 1, type 2, and type 3, with the type 3 being the best quality. And what we really encourage DPWH is to use more and more of your budget to introduce bike lanes, but also upgrade the bike lanes. You know, those that are type 1, they need to be upgraded into type 2 and type 3 so that cyclists have more protection and more safety. Because as I had mentioned in my presentation or in my short talk, there are a huge number of households, Filipino households, that own bicycles and that use bicycles regularly. And what we have found out is that everyone benefits when more people use bicycles for daily trips. We need to actually get motor vehicle users to try to shift to using bicycles, and the health benefits are so great also when people are more active. So oftentimes we get the comment that ay wala naman nagbibisikleta eh, at no one's biking on our roads. But you know, there's also a saying that you can't determine the need for a bridge by the number of people swimming across a river, you know. And if roads are unsafe, it will naturally discourage people from cycling. So really, we need to build in order to get the type of behavior that we want from our Filipino motorists and commuters. We should build to change behavior. So this is really the challenge that we put to DPWH. Don't build based on what you see to be today's demand. You should build in terms of the type of travel demand you want to see tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, it's a very important point, Dr. C. As saying goes, build it and they will come. If we have more bike lanes, then more people will be motivated to use bicycles instead of using their cars or using the road for traveling. They will use a non-motorized forms of transport like biking, which is more sustainable and healthier. Okay, thank you, Dr. C. At this point, let us go to the questions of our participants. There is a question here from Gabriel Domingo, and this is about funding for our transport infrastructure. He said there is intensive interest in an investment fund to help funding. I suppose you guys know what he is referring to. Based on the paper, is there room for such an investment fund? To piggyback on this, the World Bank Climate Report in the Philippines suggested electrification of public transport as a high-value investment to reduce a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. From the paper, this is about 100 billion US dollars over 25 years. Can such funds be marshaled without such a dedicated fund? Who would like to answer this question? Dora, I saw in the chat box that there is a related question related to this from Dr. Yap of the UP Diliman. Dora, please.
If the investment fund that is being talked about here is the Maharlika Fund, there's a previous question on the Q&A, which I answered using the chat box. My answer is that risks and rewards there are uncertain. But if we are to look closely at the implementation challenges, just solving the implementation challenges will generate certain returns. So that's my answer to that. On the World Bank climate report, where there's a suggestion on the electrification of public transport and also private. I think that what started is the electrification of private transport through the e-vehicles, the incentives for that. We agree with that, and that can really be a major source of greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So you mentioned there that about 100 billion US dollars over 25 years. That's not a fund, I think, but that's the equivalent of the GHG emissions reduction. But if if something can be done to translate this into justifications for securing green financing from international sources, then the Philippines should do that, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adora. Would our other speakers have something to say? Okay, just use okay. Let's move to another question, and this time, well, we're done with funding. We have here from Shane Yumikura. She said, especially in developed countries, investments in electric vehicles have started. Does our current transport projects take into consideration this new shift for greener mobility? For example, having more charging stations. Who would like to take a crack at this question? Perhaps we can ask from the Department of Transportation or the DPWH.
Sure. I can take the question.
Please, Asec.
Sure. So we're making sure that I'm not sure if people have heard of one of our priority projects. It's called the Davao Public Transportation System Modernization Program, DPTMP. Basically, it will be it's an ADB funded project in the city of Davao, and part of that is the acquisition of a bus fleet. And part of that bus fleet is fully electric already. So in the public transportation space, we are in the process of making sure our new fleets of transportation of buses, for example, are e-vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Asec. May I select some questions that have been answered already by our speakers, but seem very interesting. And this, may I read them for the benefit of our Facebook viewers, because they cannot see the Q&A on the live stream. Okay, perhaps Adora, you may want to answer this again about the ranking based on road connectivity. And this one is from from Mr. Manolo Abelia. Does the ranking based on road connectivity take into account the archipelagic character of countries? It is self-evident that road connectivity between cities in country like the Philippines, which consists of many islands, cannot be compared with road connectivity in, say, Thailand. And I think you've answered this already, and Jokkaz also has a rejoiner. Please, Adora.
Yes, so we cited the Global Competitiveness Report data that's done by the World Economic Forum. Well, you're right, it does not take into account the archipelagic character of countries, but it would be good to give that feedback to the group at the World Economic Forum that's doing that. No.
Okay, thank you. And Jokkaz, would you have anything to add?
Yes po. To explain lang po yung indicator na road connectivity index from the report, no, that index measured actually two elements. No, the first is the average speed, and the second is the straightness of a driving itinerary connecting the 10 or more largest cities that together account for at least 15% of the economy's total population. So yeah, tama po si Ma'am Adora na hindi po nito na take into account your archipelagic character ng country, kasi it only measures the average speed and straightness of a certain itinerary. So yun po.
Okay. If I may add to that, by the way, our strategy here in the Philippines for improving, that kind of connectivity is having a road RoRo transport system, or yung nautical highway system. So the RoRo transport is a sort of bridge across islands. So that's our strategy.
Thank you very much, Dora. We have here a question from Anedan. Okay, Eleazar Adan, and he said that they are finding it hard to get data and information on local roads for use in infrastructure development planning. There is no organized and official database on local roads. What could be the appropriate government agency to do the database on local roads? Is it the DILG or the TSA? Maybe this will need legislation or mandate to the concerned agency who will do the database. Well, this perhaps our speakers from the OTR or the DPWH can give their insight into this question. Asec or engineer? Okay.
WHS, they're the owner of many of the roads as well.
Okay. Asec, can you repeat what you said? Nag-choppy kayo.
This might be more appropriate for DPWH.
Okay. Engineer, please.
Can you repeat the question again?
Okay. Have data, the availability of data on local roads. There is no organized and official database on local roads, and this has also been one of the problems, I think, issues mentioned by Jokkaz and Adora in their study, Please.
Maybe it should be in partnership with DILG and the PSA, so to get the right data.
Okay. Okay. Would our authors have something to say regarding this? Adora?
Yeah, actually, we talk with the DILG Office of Project Development Services team, so that specific unit, so
okay.
Hopefully they can come up with a program on this. It's actually one of the low-hanging fruits, that we can spend on improving access to information. First, improving the availability of data, and then improving the access to this. No, so that is a good investment to make. Hopefully, the DILG will spearhead this. Thank you.
Thank you. Then a question from Joel Lucina. You may have already answered this, engineer or Asec, but you may want to clarify, give your clarification. From Joel Lucina, what inter-island projects do you propose for the medium term, that is from 2023 to 2028, to connect mainland Bicol to Masbate and Catanduanes and to Samar? Engineer?
With regards to the inter-island bridge project, included our inner pipeline is the Cebu-Mactan Bridge, additional port bridge connecting Cebu and Mactan, and in the priority also is the second San Juanico Bridge. Another priority bridge project of the department is the bridge connecting Panay, Guimaras, and Engr. Ongoing right now is the Pangil Bay Bridge in Mindanao. We have a detailed engineering design connecting Bataan to Cavite is also ongoing right now. So that's some of the priority bridge projects of the department, connecting inter-island.
Okay. And here's also another question for both government agencies. To what extent has the Department of Transportation, DPWH, to what extent has this agencies been giving awareness to the public about road and traffic rules? Engineer, your information campaigns about road and traffic rules? Information and education campaigns. Maybe you can cite some examples. And the same person said that maybe your agencies could collaborate with the DepEd to start awareness of the railways and traffic rules as early as possible.
I believe that the LTO has actually been doing a great job in terms of campaigning for more information on road rules, or at least driver education. There's been a big reform on how we process and digitize our driver's licenses, which is a privilege, not a right. So proper education of drivers is of paramount importance to the LTO. And it's a major portion of their digitization efforts to ensure we're able to track and monitor and enforce and police violators of these rules. As for working with DepEd, there have been major initiatives actually on promoting active transport among children. So I think through Robbie of Move As One Coalition, I think there has been some participation from civil society in starting children young in using bicycles, giving bicycle lessons in schools. So the priority is also to teach children how to use and be more aware that active transport is a viable mode of transportation.
Okay, thank you, Asec. Dr. C, would you have something to add regarding, let's say, campaigns being initiated by your organization for road safety?
A very important topic, and I'm glad it was raised by as a question. Like Asec Leo mentioned, we are advocating for cycling to be taught as a physical education at whatever level, primary school, high school, even at the tertiary level. It would be great to have more people learn how to bike simply because it can be a useful means of mobility, but also for exercise, recreation, good health. In terms of safety, I'm hoping we can also build a joint campaign among our transport agencies to make our schools safer for everyone in the school community. As we know, so many of our public and private schools are along major roads, and some are even along major highways. And to the extent that we can try to make our schools, those roads in front of schools, vehicle-free during opening and dismissal times, that would be, I think, one of the things we would want to push. And if possible, even just creating like a vehicle-free space in front of every school, that would help to protect all our youth who are in various levels of schools. So this is maybe a suggestion we can make to our public agencies and our local governments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. C. Well, as we all know, crucial for the Philippines is having disaster resilient infrastructure, because we are highly vulnerable to natural disasters and climate change impacts. May we know if guidelines and standards for disaster resilient infrastructure in place, and who is making sure, which agency is making sure that these standards are being implemented. Engineer Alday, please. Did we lost him again? Okay, I can see him on the screen, but perhaps Asec Velez, would you like to respond to this question?
Apologies, which question was that?
Yes, it's about disaster resilient infrastructure, which, as we all know, is crucial for the Philippines, being highly vulnerable to climate change threats, as well as to natural disasters. Are standards and guidelines in place, and which agency is making sure that the standards are being followed?
So actually, one of the things we're trying to change internally is changing the benchmark of design, because before, I think we were only designing to 100-year floods. I think there was Project NOAA that simulated areas that would be affected by 100-year floods. But what we're seeing globally is that some of these models are actually no longer, maybe no longer be relevant, because it's the 100-year floods, which are supposed to be happening every 100 years, are happening more frequently. So we should maybe using 1,000-year flood projections instead. So for the North-South Commuter Railway, for example, this is what we used. If you notice, the NSCR is virtually all elevated railway from Manila to Clark, and from Manila to Calamba. It's virtually all elevated. And this is exactly one of the reasons why disaster resilience is one of the reasons why we did this. Is we want to ensure that the transportation systems are resilient to natural disasters, or that they are easily fixed in case of natural disasters, because these will be vital lifelines for transportation if such disasters occur. So similarly with many of our other infrastructure, such as airports, ports, disaster resilience is top of mind when it comes to designing these things. So there.
Thank you, Asec Velez. I think engineer is back. Engineer Alday is back. Sir? Okay, I think we lost him again. Okay, let's move to another question then. Okay. Okay, here's another question from Daniel Rosero. While infrastructures are put in place to organize our transport sector, how are your efforts? What have been the efforts of I think this is for our two agencies. How are your efforts in lowering the level of car ownership in the country going on, especially since it significantly contributes to road congestion and pollution. On the other hand, lowering the level of car ownership may be a big help to resolve such transport issues and other issues that are present. Okay.
Well, let's be frank. Until we have proper alternatives for which comes in the form of good quality mass transportation systems, I don't think we'll see a decrease in car ownership and car usage. So the strategy of government is to build more quality mass transportation systems, promote active transportation, such as bus rapid transit, new railways. That's the only way we can get car users to transfer modes, because they're still convenient. That's the thing. So we have to provide similarly convenient, comfortable, efficient, affordable mass transportation.
Okay, thank you, Asec. And Dr. C, I see you nodding your head. Would you have anything to say?
Yes, I want to add and also highlight, one of the points made by the authors. One of the, I guess, perhaps disappointments in the last few years is or at least the last PDP, was the legislation of, the national transport policy, that did not materialize. And one of the things that was very important under the national transport policy is this principle of moving people, not cars, of prioritizing movement of people and goods over the movement of vehicles. It's so important that that principle becomes embedded in the objectives, targets, performance metrics, and budgets of all our agencies. And this is something I'm hoping everyone here, including, all of us in the academic community and the research community, we can push in this direction, because it's so important for that philosophy to carry across. In terms of the point made by Asec Leo, it's very true. It's difficult to introduce what they call travel demand management or car restrictions ahead of improvements in active transport and public transport services. So this is where we need to focus our attention, our budgets, our projects should be on raising the quality, the desirability of public transport, walking and cycling. So for all of us in this room, the objective is, let's create, cities, let's create our urban environments where all of us here can use public transport, walk to our destinations or cycle to our destinations every day instead of using a private motor vehicle.
Thank you very much, Dr. C. And perhaps we can ask some our speakers from PIDS to expound on this implementation challenge that they reported earlier. And this is about the Mandanas-Garcia ruling affecting the timely completion and quality of infrastructure projects. Adora, you may want to expound on this. Are you referring to the capacity of our LGUs to handle infra projects, please?
Yeah, precisely, the capacity of our local government units. And I remember that in one conversation, the DPWH has this fear of transferring projects that require sophisticated technology to the LGUs, because they might not have the capacity to implement those kinds of projects. And they're present in some bridge projects, and I think that can be solved through greater capacity building. And well, even before capacity building, in the identification pa lang, in the prioritization of projects, much can be improved, and that can, that will require the support of the ILG and NEDA in the planning, programming, and prioritization. And then during implementation, public procurement practices, no, ensuring that there is a competitive there's a competitive environment in the local government unit, no, ensuring that the contractors have the necessary capacity are there, and there can be viable partnerships, no, that can solve the difficulty or help solve the difficulty of LGUs in implementing projects given their bigger mandate now and bigger funding because of the Supreme Court ruling on Mandanas Garcia case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dora. Well, there are other questions in the Q&A left unanswered, but most of them actually have been answered in the presentation of our speakers. Don't worry, because we will make those presentations publicly accessible after the webinar. Okay, at this point, time check. Okay, we have a few minutes left for some parting words from our speakers, and may I ask them for if they have anything to say to our audience. Adora, you may want to start, then we can call on our other resource persons.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for the participation of everyone here, and thank you for our guests, our discussants, Dr. Robbie, Asec Leo, and the engineer from the DPWH, Engineer Alday. Thank you for your participation. So this is, I think, an incomplete study, because we have not yet covered public transport. But again, as I explained earlier, we were limited by the task that was given to us, and that is to cover the quantity and quality of road and rail. But I recognize that public transport and active mobility is an important issue. So I sincerely hope that there can be a future study on this. No, if not by the PIDS, then perhaps by the DOTR, being the agency for transport policy. And I thank everyone for recognizing that. Even in the Q&A, I see that, and in the exchanges, I see that's an important issue and a future area for research. So thank you for your participation and the comments that we received. I hope that the RID has consolidated the comments, because this will also be important in our future researches, even the unanswered questions. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jokkaz. And Jokkaz, any parting words?
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank din po our discussants, Doc Robert, Asec Leo, and Engineer Alday, and to our audience po sa Zoom and sa live stream. Now, I think for my parting words, long-term transport planning po yung isa sa mga policy na insights ng study. When we say long-term transport planning, it should ensure that the targets we set are backed by data, in consideration to the actual needs of the people. And it should also ensure that these targets are actually met. And lastly, that it should monitor that we don't undo whatever accomplishments we may have along the way, through proper asset preservation. So hindi lang po nagtatapos sana yung sa paggawa, sa pag-construct or pag-implement ng mga projects, kundi dapat resilient din yung mga binibuild natin infrastructure, right, na preserve natin yung life cycle nito.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jokkaz. And may we hear from Asec Leo of the Department of Transportation?
Thank you so much for having us. Again, just let me know if you reach out to my office if you have any questions about the plans and priorities of the DOTR. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Engineer Alday of the DPWH, sir. Okay, I think he has still has
Hello.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Again, thank you for inviting DPWH to share the DPWH programs and projects. And the last thing, note, we should utilize digital technology for digital transformation and data analytics, because proper and correct data is needed to have a more concise policy direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Alday, and of course, Dr. Robert C. Please,
Yeah,
sir.
thanks, Sheila. I want to thank the authors and PIDS so much for, focusing on this topic and giving us a chance to have this rich discussion about the transport sector. I just noticed, so many, like more than 300 people were attending on Zoom, and I'm sure the live stream was attended also maybe by thousands. It's a very timely topic, and I would encourage PIDS to build like a transport sector team or unit within PIDS. And, looking at the experience of other countries that have a very strong sector plan and policy. For example, in Korea, they have something called the Korea Transport Institute, KOTI. It's these very well staffed and expert transport policy think tanks that actually develop the long-term vision and the policy continuity that drives the improvements in the sector. So that's what we should also aim for in the Philippines, to have that, continuity of policy based on strong expertise among analysts like yourselves. So thank you very much for this. This is terrific. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. C. We're honored to have you at this event. Actually, at PIDS, you mentioned about having a transport research team at PIDS. We already have one. We have Dr. Adoracion Navarro and Dr. Chris Francisco researching on transport infrastructure. And in the future, we will have another webinar. This time, it will discuss about our air transport infrastructure. So do watch out for that event. Okay, so friends, please join me in thanking our speakers for the nuggets of wisdom that they shared with us this afternoon. Let us give all of them a big virtual clap. And we also appreciate our audience active participation in the poll and the open forum. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and learned a lot as well. And here are the winners of our webinar raffle. Well, for those of you who are new to our webinar, each week, whenever we have a webinar, we randomly pick 3 names from our Zoom participants and also from FB, from Facebook, and we give them a prize as a token of our appreciation. So our webinar raffle winners for this week are Garnelo Jose Cupay, Mary Jane Rocamora Jomena, and Charmaine Ruiz. So Garnelo, Mary Jane, and Charmaine, our webinar team will get in touch with you for the delivery of your prize. And finally, we have some reminders. Well, you can access all the presentations from today's webinar on the PIDS website, and we will also flash on the screen is the link to the full study. So do visit our website regularly for the studies of PIDS and all our knowledge resources. Also, please answer the feedback survey that will pop on your screen after this webinar. Your comments are important to us to improve our virtual events. In addition, as I mentioned, do visit our website for our knowledge products and services, and also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And we also have a YouTube channel where you can access the recordings of all our events. For our last webinar this February, we will talk about tapping innovative data sources to address data gaps. That will be next week, same time. And finally, we would like to acknowledge the various organizations from the government, academia, civil society, business, and international development community that join us today. Also, our friends from the media, maraming salamat po. And this concludes our virtual policy forum. Again, our sincerest thanks to all our guests and to all the participants on Zoom and Facebook for your active participation. We hope that you'll join us again next week. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.